because we are actually day to day faced with those kind of situations where we may need to prioritize on requirements, for example, negotiate that against budget and time with stakeholders. We need to bring our stakeholders on board on that journey and be able to communicate messages in a really clear and concise manner without hurting feelings, without disrupting the relationship that you have with them.
Welcome to the Inside Business Analysis podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Jacobs, and today I am joined with Tahmina. How are you doing today, Tahmina?
I'm good, thanks, Tando, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you for being on. I'm really excited for our chat today, and just to pick your brain on something that you recently did a talk on one of the BA events on a topic that I think is actually quite interesting to kind of just have a chat about. But before we get into all of that, just briefly tell us who you are and what do you do?
So I'm a certified business analyst with over about 9 years of experience. I have a background in economics, actually. So that's the degree I did at uni. And I just had an interest in pursuing that degree because I really enjoyed it at A-levels. It was around about the time of the 2009 financial crisis kind of time. So everything was so relevant then. And I think by the time I came out of uni, I was thinking I'd have a career in the economics field. I would be solving the world's money problems. But at the same time, I did want to experience the world of work a bit more and, just see what was out there. So I took up an opportunity with a company where I was actually an operations analyst. I very much could apply the skills that I'd learned at uni, analytical skills, data analysis, creativeness, the problem solving skills, all those things. And just coincidentally, the company was also going through a technical transformation at the time. They were delivering more digitized products and delivering on their technology strategy. And slowly our team's roles we all kind of became business analysts. And a lot of people around me and my team were actually within that role. And the kind of work that we were doing, it just really interested me and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So while that being at that company was supposed to be a short-term plan, I ended up being there quite longer. And I just ended up really liking the business analysis profession and felt like this was probably something for me. And then, I thought, well, let me formally get qualified. And I ended up pursuing the BCS International Diploma in Business Analysis. Since then I've been working at companies where I've been able to apply my BA skills, deliver more digital products, background in e-commerce, CRM replacements, content management systems, and now I've been given the opportunity to work on a variety of different projects as well, involving back-end systems and front-end systems even. So it's been really great, and over the years I've just really adapted to different situations, picked up on different situations with observations and things like that, and now I'm just really passionate about sharing my knowledge and contributing to the BA practice as much as possible.
Yeah, I can definitely hear your passion for business analysis coming through there. What would you say were the things that piqued your interest the most in business analysis that then led you to think, actually, I want to go down this path?
I think it's just with any topic that you get into, regardless of you having a background in it or any kind of domain knowledge in it, the ability to just go deep dive into it and just understand the subject really, and I love learning new things. So that's one thing that I really enjoyed, and still do. You can deep dive in any subject and come back out of it, move on to the next one. But you still, you don't remember all those details, but you still have that at the back of your mind and have some sort of experience in it. So you're able to dip your toes into things and come back out and go on to experience different varieties of work. And technology is always changing. So it's lovely to be able to keep up, upskilling your knowledge and your skills in that way.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same. Love learning. I love throwing myself into new environments, and that's what keeps me going, I'd say, as well in my career. So before I became a BA, I was in sales and account management, and it was cool, and I enjoyed it. But I just kind of felt it got to a point where I felt like there's no longevity for me here, because I've kind of done all I could within that space. And there was kind of nothing else to learn other than maybe changing companies and learning what their products and services are that they're selling. But beyond that, I kind of felt there's nothing else for me to learn at this point. Not that I knew everything, but I just didn't really, have that passion in me anymore. But being a business analyst it's exciting, as you say. You work on a back end system for 6 months, let's say, and then after that you can work on an e-commerce website, and then you work on all these different things, but fundamentally you're still doing business analysis activities within that, and that's what makes it exciting. Do you actually use or find that your economics degree helps you as a BA at all in any way?
Sometimes, yeah. I think knowing it's actually a key. One of the, I think, part of the modules in BCS is on knowing your economic context, right? And sometimes it does, because especially where you're working in a commercial project, and where budgets and things are concerned, and you need to understand context in that way. So yes, definitely it does in that sense. But also the transferable skills, like I talked about earlier, the analytics side of things, the data analysis side of things, those kind of things you are constantly applying in your role, and in whichever role. I think it's quite relevant.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. A very good point. And economics definitely sounds like a fun degree. I did business management degree, and we had an economics module within that degree.
Yeah.
And it was one of my favorite modules for sure. But I can only imagine how much deeper you went into everything in economics as a degree for that period of time. So in terms of like the talk you did at this event that we went to, you did a talk on being assertive in the workplace. And I just found it really interesting, because I'll be honest, until you did that talk, I'd never really thought about assertiveness as a thing to like develop or to think about. I kind of just thought you're either naturally assertive or you're not, kind of thing. And if you're introvert, extrovert kind of boxes, that's what I was thinking in my head. But like, it was quite interesting when you're doing your talk about how you were essentially saying that we should be developing this skill, almost the soft skill of being assertive. What was it that, or what does, I guess let's start with the meaning of assertiveness from your perspective. What exactly does being assertive mean, and why do you think it's important for us to have that quality as BAs?
So I think, from my perspective, assertiveness is where you're able to be really clear about your position on things. What you might be passionate about, what you stand for, but you're able to do it in a respectful way. You're able to do it in a way that means that you're calm, you're collective, you're maintaining positive relationships with your stakeholders, with the people around you, but you're not compromising on what you believe in. And I think more so in the workplace, you're not compromising on the kind of workload you have or the kind of career that you want to build. And so I think from a business analyst perspective, it's really important to understand that, because we are actually day to day faced with those kind of situations where we may need to prioritize on requirements, for example, negotiate that against budget and time with stakeholders. And we're constantly, like I said, we're working with technology different technical constraints may be present on, why we can't deliver a particular requirement, for example. And we need to bring our stakeholders on board on that journey, and be able to communicate messages in a really clear and concise manner, without hurting feelings, without, without disrupting the relationship that you have with them. And yeah, I think it's a really key skill, an important skill, when you're maintaining your stakeholder relationships.
Yeah, which is obviously a big part of what we do as BAs, isn't it? A lot of what I always say that my success is dependent on my team and people that I work with. Because as we've kind of touched on earlier on, I'm not the person who's building the websites or building the databases in the back end. I'm not the person who knows the ins and outs of anything. But as part of working on a project, I kind of work with people who know those things. So then as part of that relationship building process, assertiveness definitely plays a part, doesn't it? But I'll be honest, maybe I'm just by myself here, but I definitely do think that there is a certain stigma maybe with the word assertiveness. Like if someone says to you, be assertive, it almost sounds aggressive.
Yes. Yeah.
And it almost sounds like, oh, I don't want that. Like that's not something I want to be. So like break that barrier down for somebody who might be listening to this, saying, okay, it's an important skill, but it just sounds aggressive when someone says be assertive. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think it's two ways to look at it, right? It's you can either be, I think, aggressive, or you can either be quite passive. And assertiveness is actually somewhere in the middle. Because if you're aggressive, I think you're showing that you are not prepared to change your opinion on things or listen to others. Whereas if you're passive, you're more likely to say yes to everything. You just want to, make people happy. You have a fear of letting people down. And I think, personally speaking, I naturally have always been on the passive side. I think when I reflect on it, it's probably from that fear of, letting people down, and, being a people pleaser, which, genuinely speaking, I don't think that's a negative trait. I think that's quite a positive trait, because it shows that you're considerate of the people around you, that you care for other people's opinions. That's all good, but I think you've got to be mindful that it doesn't come at a cost of your own objectives or your own passions. And I think that's more important in the workplace, because whilst you do want to make your stakeholders happy, you don't want that to be at a cost of your own well-being, when it means that you may be overburdened with workload, where your career isn't going in the direction that you want it to be. It's more just you're just going along with the flow, and you're just taking it along in the line of the way that other people might want it to go. So it's keeping these things in mind. You're trying to achieve a balance, and I think that's where assertiveness comes in. It's where you can achieve what you want for yourself, whilst making other people happy, but doing it in a way that is respectful, and clear, and demonstrates your confidence.
Yeah, do you know what? That's a very very clear picture. I like it a lot. It actually simplifies or demystifies the myths around when people are like, be assertive. But let's touch on the softer side that you mentioned, or the passive side even of being a people pleaser, because I can definitely put my hand up and say I'm naturally a people pleaser as well, and obviously, to your point, do see the good of that, in fact, because that's part of the soft skills of building relationships and ensuring that there's a connection with the people you're working with. But equally speaking, there is a part where that can then cross a line that's then even on the negative side. So if someone is still at that people pleaser phase, what kind of things could they do to kind of start to move towards the middle point of being assertive, without kind of staying on that people pleaser phase whilst working on the projects they're working on?
Yeah. So I think probably first take a step back and just assess where you are. Like maybe, ask yourself these questions about how often are you saying yes to things when deep down you actually don't think this is the right answer. What is actually stopping you from sharing what you think? Is it that you've got a lack of energy in that moment, you've got lack of motivation, or is it the fear of letting somebody down? So I think start from there. And when you think about what stops you from sharing what you think, if it is that there are times where you are lacking in that energy and that motivation to say something in that exact moment, there are opportunities where you can build those opportunities by saying, I've heard what you think. I need to reflect on that a bit. Can we reschedule this conversation? Can we revisit this? And we can expand on it more, for example. So I think that's one way to address it. The other way is, if it is stemming from, I really don't want to let this person down. Try to think of, why is that? Are there other methods, other ways that we can address the problem? So, for example, it could just generally be based on like timescales, that you've got a stakeholder who is, persistent in a particular requirement being delivered, because they want to get it done within this financial year, for example, within the budget. But that it's not going to meet the budget. It's going to go over, for example, after you've had those feedback conversations with your technical stakeholders. How do you deliver that message? Maybe you can, write a few points down. I think it's one of the tips I shared on that event, actually. Write some notes down, perhaps. Play that back with the person that you trust, actually, and practice. And go into the meeting, with just those notes as reference, so that you can kind of refer back to it as you structure the conversation. But yeah, it is. I think this does take practice. Can't say I'm perfect at it, but it does take a lot of practice, a lot of patience, and willingness to step out of your comfort zone. So it will be a gradual process.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's some very strong tips there as well. And one thing that helped me in my people pleaser phase, should I say, was that someone said to me, I can't remember if I read this somewhere in a book or something, but essentially it said something along the lines of, say no 10 times or something before you say yes, something like that, like something that's really out there. And it was just like,
yeah,
okay, that's interesting. But what the argument was you're learning to say no. Essentially, that was what they were trying to come across and say.
Okay,
if someone just come to you and says, can you do this?
Just say no. You're just learning to say no.
Yeah, it's you kind of stubbornly learning to say no, should I say. And then eventually you go back to your default of saying yes. But I think what they were also trying to say is that process would then teach you that saying no is not the end of the world, and that you said no and you moved on and they moved on and they don't hate you for saying no either. I think that was kind of like the psyche behind it. Now, obviously, you could take it or leave it; it's up to you. But I just find a very strong in your face type of practical thing to do.
Because believe it or not, people are not always thinking about that time you said no. 6 months down the line.
That's a fact. That is a fact, to be honest. Well, unless if you say no to coming to your birthday, maybe that's a bit personal. But saying no to on a project, can you help me with this, or can you do this? They probably won't remember it 6 months later. How about the other people there who are more on the aggressive side? So what would you say that they could try? Is it different? Should they do the same things, or should they try any specific things that would work for them?
I'm a big fan of getting feedback. So, if you haven't realised it yourself, probably get some feedback on how you are on the scale. Again, start from there. But I think it's I think it's probably going to be apparent if you're coming from that mode, that aggressive mode, and you try and put your points across, but they're still not heeded to. It's probably because people are not responding to it in the positive way that you would hope. So that's the first indicator. But secondly, again, it's kind of thinking rationally. I think about why it is that you have to deliver bad news, for example, or why it is that you have to protect your time on a particular project. Kind of try to structure your argument. Again, this all takes practice, right? So maybe, take this, I'd say similar advice, put some notes down on a piece of paper before you're heading into that meeting, practice it on few people, and then try and portray that. So I think that's probably my advice for that category.
No, it's a very good point as well. I think thinking about your response actually is more powerful, because I guess I'd say generally the people who are more aggressive, their initial response is probably too harsh. So taking the time to then think about that response in advance, or maybe type the email, then delete it and type another email kind of situation, that would then help them to soften the blow a little bit in the delivery of what they're trying to say. So those are some very good points. So another thing that I was thinking about is that, so let's just say there's somebody listening to this and they're saying, you know what, they agree with all the things that we've mentioned, and they're going to take your tips on board, but there's just this in their minds, should I say, there's almost a fear. They're holding themselves back because they kind of think that maybe if I do speak, even if I speak up, no one's going to listen to me, or no one's going to take me seriously, or I'm just a junior BA, for example. Maybe that's in their heads, or whatever it may be. What would you say to that person who's they're kind of holding themselves back in their own heads almost?
I think, first of all, just try and understand where that fear is stemming from. Is it the audience that you're speaking to? Is it a big audience? And if that is putting you off, maybe start with small. And I think this, like I said, this is such a gradual process. Assertiveness is just one factor of the whole stakeholder management skill set. So try to think of how you can build a positive relationship with a particular stakeholder all the way throughout your engagement with them. And before you even, if being assertiveness feels like a big milestone, before you get there, try to think of other ways that you can start building this positive relationship with them, because at the end of the day, it's building trust, as well as building your assertiveness, or building your reputation with them. So I think that's probably one tip I'd give. The other I'd give, open that door of self-doubt and let it leave the room, because you wouldn't be where you are if you were not confident. And so let that go. And it's natural. Fear is natural. Everybody has it. But it's about recognizing that trigger, and what is it that's triggering it, and trying to address that, so that we can be a better, confident version of ourselves.
And that's it sounds simple, but definitely does require some effort. I say?
It does, yeah.
Especially if those fears, you've kind of had them for a while, and you've carried them, I guess, unknowingly or knowingly, you've carried them throughout your career, and all of a sudden you're kind of having to question them and see, where they're coming from. So yeah, but it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor, should I say, to really understand where's it come from and what the triggers behind it, for you to then be able to overcome them, essentially, isn't it? So earlier on, you mentioned that you have a BCS International Diploma. Has that, and I'm curious, this is just one of those, it's one of those things that I've always wondered, and people have different opinions on this. First of all, do you think that getting any BA certification, it doesn't have to be BCS per se, but do you think getting certification as business analyst is an important thing to do or a good thing to do?
I think it's definitely value in it. I know it's not necessary. I've met amazing BAs who do not hold the qualification or may hold it in something else or not at all. But that doesn't mean they're not great at what they do. And I think that's just like the greatness of this profession, actually, that it's just so diverse that you can come from whatever background and really be successful. So I don't think it's necessary, but there is value. Personally speaking, when I completed it about 6 years ago, I was just starting out in my career, so as a BA, and at the time, a lot of the concepts I couldn't really relate to because I hadn't had the real world practical experience of it yet. However, I came out of it with a lot of theory, so that when I did come across it, I could really lean on those. The other element of it is if you're going through formal training to get the qualification, you get to meet some amazing peers who are in the same field, similar backgrounds, different backgrounds, even just starting out experience. So I think it's also a great networking method as well, because you've got to go through different modules and you sit in those classes with different people. I mean, when I did it back in the day, it was face to face, so it was nice to meet people, and then you still maintain connections with those people to this day. So I think that there's value in it.
Yeah. I definitely think so. Do you find then that once you've kind of done each module and also getting the international diploma, do you think that raised your level of self-belief and self-confidence as a BA at all?
Yeah,
Did that have any impact?
That's
Right.
also another merit to it. Obviously, you feel like, oh yes, you are now qualified and you are prepared to tackle certain situations, and it does. I guess it does help raise your profile as a BA when you're applying for jobs, especially if you've not had previous experience. Perhaps it is a good method to do that.
Yeah. The reason I was asking that was because I definitely think that I think because I've done some certifications myself. I haven't got the international diploma just yet, but I'm nearly there. But one of the things that I definitely found when I did my previous modules that I've done so far is that it certainly gave me more of a backbone, should I say,
Yeah.
in being assertive, in being confident in what I'm doing in the workplace and as a BA, and kind of feel like, build my own chest, I know what I'm doing, kind of thing, because it is one of those professions where most of the time, or at least sometimes anyway, in my case, you're either the only BA on a project or the only BA doing what you're doing. So there's kind of no instant peer-to-peer review or someone saying, "Oh, well done for doing that," or "That's the way to do it," or "Don't do it this way, do it that way instead." It's almost like you're just figuring out as you're going along, aren't you? So having the certifications is kind of like one of the benefits anyway, is that self-belief just kind of really goes up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Definitely.
So, Tahmina, it's been such a pleasure talking to you about being assertive, learning more about your journey, and just kind of picking your brain on this topic. I think you've definitely, the picture that you've painted there of kind of finding the balance, not being too passive, but also not being aggressive, and having this balance in between of standing up for what you believe in, speaking your mind, and being able to challenge people, but challenge them in a way that's still positive, so to speak, and still productive in a way in the team. It has actually highlighted even more for me why assertiveness is a key skill as BAs. Now, final questions before we kind of close off. The first question is that if people want to get in touch with you, connect with you, what's the best place for them to do that?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Tahmina Khaled. So yeah,
Nice.
I look forward to connecting with anyone who's interested to
Absolutely.
talk more.
Yeah. I'll link your LinkedIn profile in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
And so that people can find you easily. And then the last question is there anything else that you would like to kind of leave based on, the conversation that we've had today? Any last parting words for people out there to really grasp this concept of being assertive and why it's important for them to kind of focus on developing the skill?
Yeah, I think just, trying to identify your communication style. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Perhaps talk it through with your peers if on your team, or a mentor if you have one. Get that feedback so you can identify what scale you are on. Think about situations where you would apply it in as a BA. The ones that come to my mind are negotiation of requirements, trying to set that against the technical challenges that a company may have, budget, time. We can't deliver it all the time, and we need to find a balance whilst maintaining those positive relationships with our stakeholders. But yeah, just practice active listening. Think about how you can engage with your stakeholders, consciously making an effort to listen to what they're saying, asking those clarifying questions, digging deeper. And that's also, one of the skill sets of a BA, asking the right questions to get to the bottom and the root of the problem, and why they may be pushing back on certain things, and how you can help address their problems in different ways. Try to do that, and remember it's a gradual process. You've got to take the time to practice. It will take patience, and that willingness to step out of your comfort zone. But it will be very valuable to get to being an effective business analyst.
I totally agree with that. Well, those are some good parting words. I definitely have nothing to add because I think you've summed it up very, very nicely there. But I just definitely want to thank you for taking your time out to be on the podcast, and I'm sure people who listen to this will find so much value in it.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely speaking to you, Tando.